I'm a big Golgo 13 fan. I like the animes, I dig the manga, and hell, I even have a little Duke Togo figure. It has all the sex and violence that I love in an anime, and with a story about a hitman, it's just right up my alley. It's very intriguing to me. Now, I discovered Golgo 13 probably like most Americans did with the NES game that came out back in 1988. Hell, I even have the comic book that came out with the Golgo 13 game, though it's somewhere in storage, so I don't have it on me at the moment. But this game was actually pretty popular, but not necessarily for being a great game. It was always a cheap game. You could always find it very cheap. In fact, I think one of my friends even bought the game like a year or two after it was released, brand new, for like $12, which was unheard of for an NES game. So, what is with Golgo 13? What is the intrigue for it? I mean, top secret episode, I don't know. I kind of find it fascinating that Golgo 13 was even brought to the States, as no one knew who the character really was. So, what's the deal with Golgo 13 and its sequel, the Mafat Conspiracy? I don't know, but we're going to take a look at it. Golgo 13 is the eponymous manga written and illustrated by Tako Saito, first appearing in Shokugukan's big comic magazine in October 1968. The franchise has spawned a couple of full-length animated movies, several video games, a television series, and is currently the oldest-running manga still in publication. Golgo 13, aka Duke Togo, is an assassin for hire with the reputation of always completing a job once he has agreed to it. He is also known for being a man of few words, with an emotionless disposition, and having a way with the ladies. Not to mention his infamous custom M16. In 1988, Vic Tokai released a video game for the Nintendo Entertainment System based on Golgo 13 called Top Secret Episode, which was a bit of a surprise considering the notorious hitman was not well known outside of Japan. In it, you take on the role of Duke Togo, who in this American version is a spy rather than an assassin, in order to conform to Nintendo's pussification policies, who finds himself entangled within a web of lies, deceit, and conspiracy. A helicopter containing the latest weapon in biological warfare explodes high in the sky above New York City. The CIA concludes that the copter was taken down by an expert sharpshooter armed with an M16. Who else but Golgo 13 could be capable of nailing such an impossible shot? The thing is, Golgo 13 is innocent. And thus, Top Secret Episode begins with Golgo 13 on a mission to clear his name and take down the evil agency who had framed him. And it won't be easy. The game consists of 13 harrowing stages, or acts, each named after a renowned film within the history of cinema. Duke Togo finds himself in Berlin, where he must gather clues from numerous agents of a secret organization known as Fixer. The graphics during these one-on-one text scenes are superb for a 1988 NES game, although it does get difficult to discern one character from another, as many are simply palette swaps, with little difference between the cast to tell one person apart from another. The game offers several modes of gameplay, with the most prominent of them requiring you to navigate Duke on foot up against foes who will stop at nothing to impede you from uncovering the truth. The controls are the first thing you'll notice, where the traditional attack with B and jump with A are swapped. Why some games back in the day chose to do this is as big of a mystery as who shot down the helicopter, but it doesn't take long to get used to, as the action is a bit slow-paced. Duke is armed with a handgun with limited ammo during these stages and can also jump kick foes. Mixed amongst the baddies are also allies who provide, for the most part, useless clues, although some will point you in the right direction. You often have to enter buildings to come into contact with several agents of Fixer, and a lot of back and forth between the stages is commonplace. To break up this monotony, there are sections where you'll automatically be transferred to a rail shooter section, where you'll have to take out a set number of assassins using a target to exterminate the opposition. While at first this does seem like a refreshing way to change up the gameplay, it soon becomes annoying since these sections are always set in the exact same spots, meaning that every time you cross them you'll have to endure the shootout. It is a great way to build up your life though, as every enemy defeated replenishes some health, which is represented by a number, with 200 being the max. Your health slowly drains consistently, almost like a time limit. The game also changes things up with shooter stages where Duke flies a helicopter shooting down an array of planes and other generic enemies. There are also scuba stages where Duke, armed with a harpoon, swims through maze-like sections, all of which look nearly identical, which are easily my least favorite parts of the game. And damn it, there's a lot of them. But probably the most unique and harrowing parts of the game are the rat-like mazes Duke finds himself lost in. And boy do I mean lost. These 3D mazes consist of long corridors with numerous twists and turns and disorienting hallways. Walls drop down requiring Duke to blast holes through with grenades, which of course are limited to 3, not to mention loaded with frustrating trapdoors dropping you to the floor below, life-draining laser beams, and of course enemies armed with machine guns and swords. These mazes are extremely difficult and insanely huge. Just look at the map to this particular maze. You've got to be fucking kidding me! And if you choose to navigate these stages without a map, congratulations, you're a masochist. While these mazes are frustrating and unfortunately plentiful, they do look pretty good for an early NES title, but you really can't say much for the rest of the game. The side-scrolling foot stages are extremely bland looking with ugly color palettes of green and brown or a dull gray. The best looking settings are in Greece, where Duke hunts for a thief who has stolen his M16 throughout Athens. The same could be said for the underwater levels, as these all look the same except for some color swaps.
Boring!
Same goes with the shooter stages. And on top of that, the game only has a limited number of enemies throughout. Every shooter stage has the exact same enemies each and every time. Some variety would have been welcome here. The music is also plagued by mediocrity, with a sparse amount of tracks that tediously repeat throughout the game, save for the title theme, which is fantastic. It's catchy as hell. But there's a lot of cool shit in Top Secret Episode as well. On top of an intricate and superb storyline, there's plenty of bloody good violence. Literally. Check out this part early in the game where you have to stare down the scope of your M16 to take out a sniper. Now that's what I'm talking about. And how about the little splash of blood every time you blast a hole through a baddie in the mazes? Wait a minute, blood in a Nintendo game? This is the same Nintendo that pops a chub for censorship, right? Haha, it is, and boy did they miss some stuff. Check out this file that Duke retrieves about halfway through the game. Oops.
Always remember to draw those swastikas turning to the right, not to the left, always to the right.
And if you know Golgo 13, the dude just trips and falls into pussy. He not only gets laid once in Top Secret Episode, but twice, with 2 different chicks. Yeah, we all know what's going on here. But probably the most heinous infraction of them all is when Duke picks up a pack of cigarettes and smokes.
And you, sir, are worse than Hitler.
How Nintendo dropped the ball on this one, I'll never know, but who cares? Games aren't just for kids, especially this one. The game also has its cryptic moments. Oftentimes you have to select an alternate path to traverse without any indicator whatsoever that there is another path to take to begin with. Can you tell that this will take you to a completely different part of the stage? Or how about here? I got into the habit of just pressing up every few steps to avoid missing where I was supposed to go next. And the game is long. So long that it should have included a password or save feature. But hell no, not in Golgo 13. You know you want to run through this maze each and every time you play the game. Come on, admit it. You're a glutton for punishment. In fact, the game only gives you a limited number of continues, 52 to be exact, with the number of times you've perished indicated on the title screen. Honestly, this is more than enough to finish the game, but still. Golgo 13 Top Secret Episode is a good game, but with many flaws. The highlight is by far the story, which is absolutely fantastic. An anime or manga could have easily been adapted from this game, and it would have totally worked. But with look-alike stages and gameplay throughout the game, bland as hell graphics and music, repeat environments and bad guys, and no password or save feature, the game is just an average affair. It definitely had the potential to be an adventure that stands tall above the rest, but unfortunately fell short in many aspects. But hey, redemption can always be achieved with a sequel. A weapons satellite mysteriously falls out of orbit and crashes into the Alps. A terrorist organization known as the Mafat Revolutionary Group takes credit for the heinous act and demands that the United States and Russia turn over classified military information, including the US's submarine armed with nuclear warheads, the Los Angeles. The Mafat Revolutionary Group must be stopped at any cost, and only one man is capable of getting the job done. Duke Togo released the Mafat Conspiracy in 1990, and from the get-go, the visuals are a huge improvement over its predecessor, boasting impressive Ninja Gaiden-esque cutscenes. The game uses Golgo 13's skeleton logo donning a crown of thorns, caught in the crosshairs as a transition from stage to stage. Golgo 13 is actually a reference to the death of Jesus Christ. The number 13 alludes to the number of participants during the Last Supper before Christ was crucified. How's that for symbolism? Returning from Top Secret Episode are the side-scrolling foot sections with some major improvements. Long gone is the numerical life meter, instead replaced with a more traditional health bar made up of several units. Duke has the ability to kick his foes until he obtains ammo, and then the guns come out blazing. The graphics are a huge improvement in this sequel, with quite a bit of color and detail in contrast to its predecessor. A much welcome change. The music is also improved, but it's still average at best. The disorienting mazes also make a reappearance, a little too often in my opinion, which we'll cover in a minute here. Many of the same traps from the original game are littered within, and maps are mandatory. That is unless you're one of those sadistic bastards who likes to insert sharp objects into your orifices. In that case, fuck the map. Gone are the shooter stages, instead replaced with rad racer-like levels. It's you against the clock on these winding roads filled with devil's turns, loaded with a surprising amount of traffic. Thankfully, grenades can be tossed at the opposition a la Bayou Billy. Your car also handles in a somewhat lifelike fashion, using a manual transmission where you will need to shift gears, including downshifting when the roads get as twisted as scoliosis. If you know how to drive a standard in real life, you shouldn't have any issues with this whatsoever. This time around there are also boss fights where Duke loses the gun and engages in the fisticuffs. Every single boss can be defeated in the exact same way, by bouncing them off the walls like a game of handball by spamming the kick button. I discovered this tactic by accident, and by golly, it worked every time. The narrative in the Mafat Conspiracy, while looking pretty in the visuals department, lacks the engaging storyline that Top Secret Episode has to offer. Kind of like The Professional over Queen Bee. Lightning rarely strikes twice, apparently. Yes, Golgo 13 gets laid once again, but this time with absolute vague innuendo. Talk about a flaccid way to end a scene. While aesthetically, the Mafat Conspiracy looks like a major improvement over Top Secret Episode, the core elements of the game sadly aren't. The game requires you to do a ridiculous amount of monotonous backtracking. You'll get through a stage, view a cutscene, and then have to retrace your steps back to where you came from to trigger the next one. You even have to retrace your steps through an enormous maze, peppered with muddled twists and turns, with a time limit no less. Jesus Christ, are you fucking kidding me? It's sheer torture. And for the cherry on top, you have to take out the evil Dr. Barrows in a sniper sequence similar to the one in the first game, staring down your scope, only this time you have to adjust your aim to account for wind resistance. The shot is extremely difficult to pull off under these conditions. And guess what you have to do all over again if you miss? The Mafat Conspiracy, in theory, should be the better game, with many of its elements vastly improved over Top Secret Episode, but in reality is simply nothing more than a paper tiger by comparison. The game is about half the size of the original, the story lacks the twists, turns, and intricacies of Top Secret Episode, and the tedious backtracking is simply bullshit. Any game that forces you through the maze-like stages that either of these games require should offer a save or password feature. The omission of one is just downright cruel. There are at least unlimited continues this time. But the bottom line is that the Mafat Conspiracy just can't crawl out from underneath the shadow of the original, and that's a damn shame, as this sequel really had a lot of potential to be a great standout game for the NES, and instead is unfortunately just another dud. So that's Top Secret Episode and Mafat Conspiracy. Now, these games are a lot more intriguing for their storyline than the actual gameplay. In fact, when I was a kid, this Golgo 13 game here I felt was pretty mediocre, even bad. Like, I didn't really like it all that much. But I rediscovered the game when I was 18 after watching The Professional, and I really enjoyed the anime, so I was like, hell, I'm gonna give this game another shot. And what do you know? I got hooked on the story. I thought the story was fantastic. And, being 18 years old, I was finally able to understand the story versus when I was 11. So I found the game a lot more intriguing then, and I actually liked it a lot more, despite the bad controls, despite the average graphics. I don't know, it's the story. That's why you play Golgo 13. For the story, not for the gameplay. Mafat Conspiracy, on the other hand, has much better graphics, much better sound, but the story just doesn't even come close to this one. The story is pretty blah. The game is really short, and you would think that it would be an improvement over the original, but it's not. This, the better of the two games. But if you're a huge Golgo 13 fan, then you owe it to yourself to play both of these games, but you probably already have. But both of these games are really cheap, so you might want to check them out anyway if you're curious. Because if you like anime, you like manga, and you're familiar with Golgo 13, then these games probably appeal more to you. Anyway, that's all I have for today. Have you played the Golgo 13 games? What do you guys think of the games? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, I will catch you all later.